Sonic Colors, the Sonic game no one cares about, because why would you?
For starters, it's really short, not to mention really easy.
It's mostly 2D. It got a mediocre remaster, and I personally think the DS version is better. Now, despite all the negative criticisms I just made of this game, I still play this game. Quite a lot, actually. So obviously, when it comes to replaying this game, I gotta get rid of something that's the main gimmick of this game, or that makes it stand out between other mainline Sonic games. You know, something that makes it more unique than every other one. Without moving, yeah, perfect. So the rules of this challenge are gonna be pretty simple. Obviously, I'm not allowed to move, so since I'm using my Xbox One controller on my Dolphin emulator, that means I can't use the joystick, but I'm otherwise able to use any other buttons, which involve jumping, boosting, and stopping/sliding. So we'll see how far we can go with that. Anyways, without further ado, let's start this off and begin my suffering. Starting off with Act 1, it was a fairly simple level. All you really had to do was just jump and air boost the whole time. Not that surprising considering it's a pretty linear stage. Act 2 was honestly just as easy as Act 1, but there was a bit of fun to be had. For example, at around the beginning of the level, you can actually boost up this ramp and perfectly time your air boost so that you can hit a red star ring, which it's a pretty neat trick. It doesn't really do much, but I thought it was pretty cool. You can also do the same thing again near the end of the level. Nothing really relevant, I just thought it was pretty cool. I did not name it this way for any specific reason at all, I just thought it would be funny. There is absolutely no reason for this. You make my life a living. Act 3 was honestly one of the most miserable video game experiences I ever had in my life. Right off the bat, this level starts you off in a quick step section, and you're gonna get stuck in this wall, and you can't really do anything about it to get through. Which is why you're gonna have to go over it instead. How do you do that? You might be asking yourself right now. Well, let me show you. At around this point, you may begin to notice that there happens to be an enemy up there. Well, we can actually use this enemy to home attack onto that one and the next two pulleys, and then use the laser wisp to go on to the next section, and we'll move on from there. And before you ask why I didn't take the bottom half instead of the top half, let me show you. Do I need to explain myself? The next section of the level is a part that requires you to drift, and as we all know, in Sonic Colors, you need to use the joystick to drift. In fact, the game even tells you to do it. Now, the way I got through this section was a little weird, so let me give you an example. So imagine Sonic goes down a slide. Getting from point A to point B would be pretty simple, right? Now let's add another slide, which immediately makes things more complicated because now in order to land at a specific point, you have to go a specific way. And to make things a little clearer, the drifting sections in this game look something like this. Now going back to the actual footage, hopefully you can see it's a little harder than it looks to do consistently. The next part of the level went pretty smoothly until I entered this 2D section and I accidentally missed the button that you were supposed to press to get the stairs to come up. This forced me to have to restart the level. Eventually, I did end up hitting the button. Yippee! Also, with the power of physics, we can wall jump now. Now, this is important to note because this only works as long as we have some boost on our meter. Otherwise, it's impossible. One dumb mistake later, and we're at the final section of the level. Going back and forth in 2D, how dare they? Okay, now normally I wouldn't do this, but I really did not want to have to suffer through this section again, so I'm just gonna show you the original 480p footage of me doing it about a year ago. And for context, when I did this challenge originally, I was doing it on my tablet, but I only finished Tropical Resort, so that's why I'm doing it again. So basically, in this section, you would have to climb up those steps, and for some reason, once you get to the very end, the thing will turn you around, then I will grab the laser wisp, then after I used it, I could just wall jump to the end of the level, and that was pretty much it. It's a lot harder than it looks, trust me. Wow. 5 minutes felt more like 5 hours. Act 4, just like my will to live after Act 3, felt like nothing. Honestly, this level was such a breeze. The only section that really tripped me up was the balloon section in the middle of the level. But otherwise, I literally got this done in 30 seconds. Act 5 didn't start off too well, seeing that I basically soft-locked myself not even 30 seconds into the level.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
But when you break it down, the level is pretty simple. It's basically laser wisp after laser wisp after laser wisp after laser whip, and whoop, all of a sudden it's done. There is no soul in his eyes. Weirdly enough, I kinda like doing Act 6. Since there were multiple moving platforms involved in this level, I kinda had to time my jumps when landing on them. It even reminded me of the Unleashed Windmill Isle DLC. Huh, wonder what I do here. I don't like this level anymore. I kid you not, this last section of the level alone cost me over 40 minutes of my life, and I hated every single second of it. I'm literally playing this footage at 10 times speed, and we're still not even halfway through it. So yeah, I was pretty happy when I finally finished the level. Moving on to the boss, it was actually pretty interesting too. The main strategy for this was to land on one of the platforms and wait for it to circle around the boss until you could eventually hit the head. Do that 3 more times and throw a laser wisp in there, and that's pretty much the whole boss. And with that out of the way, we finally finished Tropical Resort. Woo! Yeah, baby! And before we move on to the next part, I just want to let you guys know that only a small percentage of you are actually subscribed. So please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. When I hit 250 subs, I'll do a Q&A, and if this video gets 50 likes, I'll do Sonic Forces without the homing attack.
Heavy fire! Evacuate the flagship! All hands!
This level hurts more than the time my brother pushed me down the stairs. Just kidding, it was actually me. The level starts us off with a slope, and on the lower end of it, you're gonna wanna have to hit this invisible barrier so that it can turn you around and you can keep going in the other direction. Reach for the stars, how about you reach for them stairs? What follows next is just another drifting section, but since we already covered this in Tropical Resort, we already know what to do here, just air boost inside. But now they're barriers, so we can't fall off like before. No! Surprisingly enough, the 2D section of the level was actually pretty easy. Sure, there were a few tricky jumps here and there, but there was really nothing stopping me from blasting through the whole part. Unironically though, the 3D section was the part that got me. As I was boosting down the section, I got sprung back by these Eggman springs. When the springs sent me backwards, I had accidentally gotten myself stuck at the beginning of the section. So after that, I just started trying to experiment a little to see what I could do to get past these. And honestly, I tried everything. Punching Sonic, throwing Sonic at the wall, shooting Sonic, throwing him out the window. Unfortunately, it's not possible to beat Sonic Colors without moving. And honestly, it's kinda sad too because this wall is the only thing stopping us from finishing the level. The rest of the level seems perfectly fine without moving. But since we're still here anyways, why not just finish the rest of the game? Act 2 started off pretty simple. Literally for the first 10 seconds of the level, you don't need to do anything. After that, there's a bit of a drifting section, but we already have our strategy for that. So after that, we enter the 2D section. And after sliding under that little thing, we hit another problem. Yeah, I don't think it's possible. Act 3 started off pretty smoothly like usual until I entered the first 2D section. This is where I had to wall jump or attack the enemy, but I didn't have anything. So luckily there was a workaround for this. After collecting the Wisp capsule, we can actually activate the power of that one guy from Chicken Little in between these springs. This will skyrocket us and send us to the sky. Boosting in the air after that will just barely get us past the part that we got stuck on. Then I made another dumb mistake. After that, we have yet another drifting section, which was pretty easy. It was a little trickier this time though, since the slope was going up. After that, we entered another 2D section where we got stuck again. After finally getting that jump right, we entered yet again another drifting section, which was pretty easy. Or so I thought. As you can see here, after leaving the drifting section, we get stuck on this wall. And this is because normally you're supposed to attack the enemies over there, but since they're too far away, we're gonna have to get out at a very specific angle. Luckily for us, this is possible. Unfortunately, there is another problem. At the end of the homing attack chain, we get stuck on the wall yet again. And there's no way out of this one. And to make matters worse, the end of the level is literally right there. After you grab onto that pulley, there is nothing stopping Sonic in the goal ring. It is literally a free run. I tried using alternative paths, but nothing really came out of it, so let's just move on to Act 4. Just like usual, Act 4 was going pretty well, until we, once again, you guessed it, hit another wall. With no boost. Remember Tropical Resort Act 3? Yep, pretty much the same thing, except now there are no alternative paths. Act 6 is also not possible. Yet. As you can see here, there are plenty of Wisp capsules placed around all over the level. As it stands right now, this level is impossible, but I think the Wisps are going to help us more than I think. We just have to unlock them first. So for now, let's just move on to the boss and come back to this level when we have the Wisps. The first phase of the boss where you had to reach him was actually very easy. All you had to do was perform a couple of well-timed homing attacks and you would get to him pretty quickly. When I eventually did reach the boss, I tried using the drill wisp to see what it would do, but found out that it was ultimately useless since it could only go up and down.
He wasn't fast enough. The main strategy for this boss was to just stand in place until the boss came towards us, then I would attack him a little bit, and then move forward, and then attack him again, rinse and repeat until we ultimately defeat him, and that's pretty much it. And just like that, we got through Sweet Mountain. Sure, almost none of it was possible, but at least we finished it.
We still have yet to finish Act 6 anyways. Holy luminous forest. I mean, everyone trashes on that level because you spend the first 20 seconds of it just boosting and doing nothing. But here in this level, you don't have to press a single button. And you're doing this for well over 20 seconds, actually closer to 30. To be honest though, I don't even know why I'm complaining. For this challenge, that's actually useful. Anyways, this level is still impossible since after you jump off of that Eggman spring, you're forced to use the joystick to move on. Act 2 also introduces some new weird physics. As you can see here, using the cube wisp will actually turn you around. So the strategy for this was to just use it and try to roll back on that thing to turn the other way as quickly as possible. This is easier said than done. As long as you figure it out though, the level is pretty much done. It's really short. Act 3 introduces these yellow springs which you basically have to follow for the entirety of the level since they're constantly moving. As you can see here, it's extremely tedious to do. Thankfully for us, the level is actually impossible since we have to turn around here, so we don't actually have to suffer through all of that. Act 4 had a weird start since you almost instantly get trapped at the beginning, so I just had to remember that I needed to jump when I started this level. After getting trapped here multiple times, I found out that the level's impossible because even if you were able to get back up, there is nowhere else to go. Act 5 continues Act 1's automation legacy by starting us off with 30 seconds of absolutely nothing, then we go for a bit of skydiving, which is then followed by Gosh, I can't believe I finally got through that really difficult section. Okay, obviously this isn't possible. I literally died not even 10 seconds into this section. And there isn't a single chance that climbing up this tower is actually possible. I mean, look at this. To make a long story short, the main strategy for this boss is that there is no strategy. Because we can't even land a single hit on it. You're supposed to use the joystick to actually reach the boss, but since we can't use it, we're forced to just jump and air boost, but that does virtually nothing, so it's impossible. And somehow that's the end of Starlight Carnival. It was probably the shortest segment of this video, mostly because I didn't have much to say about it. The levels were either possible or they weren't. There wasn't really much in between. Planet Wisp. Probably the most iconic level from Sonic Colors. It started off pretty nicely. We just had to jump and air boost for a bit. Then we entered this drifting section and then we died. Not a problem though, we just have to make sure that we come here with enough boost so we can actually land on these by boosting towards them. The following 2D section was actually pretty easy until I accidentally died. I don't even know why I died like that. The Spike Wisp basically carried us until the rest of the section, and then we entered the quick step part. Once again, pretty easy, we just had to jump over everything. In fact, the level was going so well, I was actually pretty excited when we approached the final section of the level. After doing that, I discovered that jumping off the blocks will actually turn you the other way and you can reach the goal pretty easily. I just couldn't. But besides that, the level is definitely possible. Act 2 started off pretty straightforward until this part specifically. I tried air boosting and stopping so I could hit the button, but instead I ended up at this very specific angle where it somehow turned me around. I decided to activate the button to see what it would do, and it brought out this pulley, so clearly we were gonna need to preserve our boost to wall jump. Even when I did figure it out, it was still pretty hard to pull off because there was these spike balls that were constantly getting thrown at me. After grabbing the pulley, it brings you up to this platform, which we can just jump on the slope and it'll turn us around, and then we'll go on the rainbow rings. After grabbing those though, we get stuck in another wall. And we don't even have any boosts, and it's not possible to get any, so this is impossible. Act 3 starts us off with a quick step section, which is nothing too crazy, we just have to make a couple of careful jumps here and there. The game then decides to torture us with these extremely tight jumps that's not even worth it because at the end you have to turn around and we don't have any boost, so it's impossible. Act 4 has a pretty simple start, which eventually follows into a drifting section, and once you finish with that, we end up getting stuck here. While I was experimenting, I found out that once you're at the peak of your height, you can actually air boost from where you are and you can land on the wall. This will allow you to wall jump and continue on from there. Moving on with that in mind, at the next part I tried to use the laser wisp, but it decided it didn't want to be useful and decided to kill me instead. How did that even happen? It doesn't matter anyway, since at the next part there is nothing you can do here except fall off and die since you're normally supposed to boost. Act 5 honestly had such a ridiculous start. I mean, look at the 300 IQ move that this guy played on me. Anyways, the last section of the level was pretty scary because we had to wall jump. And at this point we had a very small amount of boost left, so we're gonna have to use them wisely. It was actually pretty easy. For the first boost, I used it to gain some distance and get a little closer to the enemy. After homing attacking him, I used the second boost to wall jump and turn around. After this, you could just climb onto the blocks and that's pretty much the whole level. Act 6 started us off with a rail grinding section, which I've done so many times it's all starting to blend together. After this, you land on these springs where you get to home attack these two enemies, and when I tried reaching the middle, it didn't work, so I ended up skydiving instead. Since you can't do anything here, I just died. In fact, it's not possible to get through this section since you'll always end up skydiving no matter how far you try to air boost. The boss for Planet Wisp was probably the hardest one yet. Since it's a remix of the original Tropical Resort boss, I was already familiar with the layout, but the rounded platforms definitely made this a lot harder to handle. You basically just had to wait for the Wisp capsule to come along, and once you collect it, you can boost around the whole boss until you find a good angle to hit him at. Besides that, the boss is pretty straightforward. And somehow that's the end of Planet Wisp. The results only got slightly better and I'm totally burnt out from all the work I've been doing, so hopefully Aquarium Park turns out to be a little better. Aquarium Park. I'd argue this level handles water better than Hydrocity does, but that's a topic for another video. Anyways, Act 1 starts us off with a skydiving section, which follows into a quick step section. which is just as usual, pretty straightforward. In fact, the entire first 3D section of this level is really straightforward, so we'll just move on to the 2D section. When we enter the 2D section, we have to do a wall jump, but luckily for us we have more than enough boost for that. After that, we enter the water, which is where I'm probably gonna have to explain to you the weird water physics in this level. First of all, taking damage underwater will almost always turn you around. Secondly, you have infinite jumps underwater. And thirdly, air boosting underwater will always send you a great distance, regardless of how much boost you have. Also, do yourself a favor and don't use the troll wisp underwater. Nothing really happened until I got to this part over here where this whole army of soldiers were surrounding me. Too bad they're all useless. After that, we enter yet again another quick step section, but this time it's impossible to get through. And I'm gonna be honest, at this point I was really disappointed since we invested so much time into this level. I mean, we're literally 7 minutes deep and we get trapped right here. Wait a minute. As you can see here, there happens to be a laser wisp here, but normally we cannot get it since we have to come here at a straight angle. So by jumping off this hill and landing on this rail grind, we can actually access the top half of the level, which will allow us to get the laser wisp at a straight angle. Anyways, after figuring that out, we made our way back to the quick step section where we could skip over it by using the laser wisp we just collected. After that, we approached the final section of the level, which is actually pretty easy. We just had to air boost forward a bit and we're pretty much done. For some weird reason, at the beginning of Act 2, when you attack this enemy, it puts you in the other direction. So I just had to make sure to stomp the enemy instead of homing attack it so it could stay in the same direction. Following that, the level just features some extremely basic platforming. In fact, it's so easy, I wouldn't be surprised if I got this on my first try. Well, thankfully I could just edit that out and pretend it never happened. Like I said, the level featured some extremely basic platforming and that was it. Act 3 started us off with these fans that were constantly pushing you down. It wasn't really anything too crazy, but it was a little different than usual. Otherwise, nothing too difficult happened until this part right here. This part was kind of like an auto-scroller since the platform was moving down and you were going down along with it. Though I had made the mistake of going all the way to the end of the platform, getting myself stuck on this wall. So the plan from here was to just stay as close to the left side as possible, so that way we wouldn't have any risk of staying stuck on the wall. Believe it or not, this actually worked. So after that, we just had to dash our way to the end of the level, and another level is done. Well, this was confusing. I mean, you spend the first 10 seconds doing nothing, and then you get stuck on this wall. After restarting, I actually noticed this laser wisp that we just passed, and that we can actually use it over here, and it will be very helpful. Weirdly enough though, we can't even get it. Eventually, I found out though that you're just supposed to push these boxes, which requires moving, so this is impossible. Act 5 seems like a perfectly normal level. Honestly, the worst part is that this is actually possible. Thankfully, the level was actually really short, so the first half was pretty straightforward. The second half was definitely a lot more difficult. I mean, I literally died at the end of the level. I definitely got really lucky though, cause after taking damage from these bombs, I came back from the springs at the perfect angle, which allowed me to finish the level. Act 6 started us off underwater, which meant we had to work with these weird physics again. What made things even harder was that since we were underwater, we always had to be on the lookout for bubbles since we were at the risk of drowning. But otherwise, things were actually going pretty well. Except until this part over here where this fan pushes us in the opposite direction. Even though we have plenty of boost, we can't wall jump underwater, so we're basically stuck here. The first phase for the boss of Aquarium Park was genuinely so tedious since we had to carry these rockets to the lever, but since we're not allowed to move, it made this really difficult to do since the rockets were always breaking. I tried using the drill wisp to see if it would do anything, but it was still useless. After finally figuring that out, we were able to finally approach the second phase. When I got here, I tried using my usual strategy of just jumping and stomping until the boss came close to me, but that didn't work since I died from it. I was starting to get really bored, so I just spammed the jump button as much as I could and stomped randomly for no reason, and this actually hit the boss. I don't know why it worked, but I'm not complaining. So as long as you're willing to sacrifice a couple of hours of your life and a couple hundred brain cells, this boss is actually pretty straightforward. And that's the end of Aquarium Park. I'm going to be honest with you, I was kind of surprised by how well this went. So hopefully things go just as well in Asteroid Coaster too. I'm not gonna lie to you, this entire zone went pretty awfully. Act 1 starts us off pretty simple with this automatic roller coaster section where we couldn't even use the joystick if we wanted to. Following that, we have a drifting section, which is pretty simple. Then we have this little open area section where I got myself stuck on this wall, and I was able to get around it. It just took me a really long time. Like a really long time. Otherwise, the level was going pretty well until this part right here. If you remember what I said about a moment ago, you'll know that we can't do anything in these coasters, which means we can't get on to the next one, so this is impossible. No. Just... no. We can't even get past the first part. And let's just say Act 3 didn't go much better either. Act 4 didn't even give us a chance since we're supposed to quickstep in this level and it's basically an auto-scroller, so we couldn't even do anything. Honestly, at this point, I was starting to get really frustrated with the challenge now because we had to go 3 levels back to back that we couldn't even get past through the beginning. In fact, I felt something like this. Act 5 went pretty well. For about 10 seconds. If you're wondering, we got blocked off by another wall again. Act 6 started us off on this roller coaster section, which if you could tell at this point was a bad sign. After that, you'll get thrown into this homing attack chain where you'll just die. There was a bit of hope though. After hitting that rock I just zoomed in on, we can actually go on this alternative path. For some reason, when I was going down this path, all my brain cells must have deactivated because I forgot to jump here and died for absolutely no reason. It didn't matter anyway, since after you get through that part, it'll just throw you into another homing attack chain where you'll just fall off and die, so this is impossible. Unfortunately for us, the boss for Asteroid Coaster was nearly identical to that of Starlight Carnival, so you can guess how well that went. Honestly, I just find it crazy that almost the entirety of Aquarium Park was possible, but none of Asteroid Coaster was. So before we move on to Terminal Velocity, we should probably check back on Sweet Mountain Act 6. To be honest, the first half of Sweet Mountain Act 6 was actually pretty easy, just a bunch of jumping and air dashing. It was this part specifically that stumped me, because without the Spike Wisp, we wouldn't be able to get over it, but since we have it, we can breeze through the rest of the level pretty quickly. There were still a few tricky jumps in this level, but the Wisps honestly made this a lot easier to handle. So yeah, somehow 1 out of the 6 levels in Sweet Mountain is actually possible. Now with that out of the way, we should probably move on to the final level. Terminal Velocity Act 1 is almost instantly impossible. Since this level revolves around quick-stepping, which uses the joystick, at one point or another, you're gonna have to dodge the lasers using the joystick, otherwise you'll just die, so right off the bat, this isn't looking too good. The final boss for Sonic Colors is another auto runner. I mean, we could damage boost our way through the cubes and dodge the lasers pretty easily, but without a way to actually reach the boss, this is still impossible, not even giving us a chance, just like Asteroid Coaster and Starlight Carnival. Honestly, what a sad way to end the video, the last few levels just being absolutely impossible. Terminal Velocity Act 2? I kinda forgot you existed. Other than dying in the beginning for no reason, I'll let the run speak for itself. As you can see here, you could get through the final level of Terminal Velocity pretty easily. And now, we finally finished the game. Of all the levels, only 15 out of 38 of them are possible, leaving us with roughly 40% of the game. As for the bosses, only 4 out of 7 of them are possible, leaving us with 57%. All of this for a combined total of 19 out of 45, which means only 42% of Sonic Colors is possible without moving. And now that that's said and done, I can finally say that I probably won't play Sonic Colors again for a really long time. I know, it's been 6 months since I uploaded. Speaking of which, if you were one of the 5 people that were subscribed to my channel before this, you're probably wondering where I was. Well, basically, I got a new laptop for my birthday. This means that I was able to edit on it instead of using my phone. So I downloaded CapCut, but I didn't really like the way the video turned out, plus almost everything was a pro feature, so I just deleted it right after I started on it. Then I downloaded DaVinci Resolve. And I'm here going to tell you firsthand, this is not DaVinci Resolve. What kind of editing software doesn't let you export a video longer than 60 seconds without paying for it? And when I finally did download DaVinci Resolve, I genuinely had no idea what I was doing. I had to look up a tutorial for everything. And honestly, I'm still learning new things about editing every day. The next video I upload probably won't be a challenge. It'll probably be some random video idea that I got, so I can upload a lot quicker. I'll still do challenges, it's just not as often since it took me this long to make this one. Anyways, thanks for watching all the way to the end. Please consider liking and subscribing. I worked really hard on this video, and the next upload I make will probably be a week or 2 from now, so I'll see you then.